My water broke to the time he was born was 16 hours, but I had pushed 3.5 of those. Hello and welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing the birth story of my first son, Nico. I'm currently 34 weeks tomorrow pregnant with our second son, Riker, but I've been kind of reminiscing as it gets closer on Nico's birth and just like the newborn stage and looking at all the pictures and stuff. So I thought it would be the perfect time to go ahead and share his birth story. I originally planned on sharing his birth story soon after he was born. I just wasn't ready mentally to talk about it. I had a bit of a hard time postpartum, and I also had some other videos planned, that were postpartum type videos and stuff, and I had even made notes and everything, and I just could never bring myself to do it. I just, like I said, those hormones and the baby blues and fun stuff like that, I just had a difficult time and didn't want to share at that time. Now I'm feeling much better, and I really wanted to share his birth story, and I wanted to go ahead and share it, one, while I'm reminiscing on all the sweet memories, and it makes me so emotional, and then also to before this baby gets here, so I don't mix up the details of anything. So anyways, let's just jump right into the story. I got a nice hot cup of tea because it's a little chilly out. I'm filming on my porch just because I like sitting out here. Nico is actually at my parents tonight, so sorry if you can hear like a weird noise in the background. Nick's working in his shop, and I didn't think about the noise when I got all set up, but I'm hearing animals in the woods like far back that way. Okay, sounded like a wolf or something. And you can't really see her, but one of my dogs, Snickers, is hanging out with me right now too, so if she pops up. She's just hanging out right here. Anyways, yeah, so where could I begin? When I had Nico, I was 40 weeks and, 2 days when he was actually born. But my water broke at 40 weeks and a day. I turned 40 weeks on a Wednesday, and so Thursday night is when my water broke, in the middle of the night, and I had an appointment on on Wednesday, 40 weeks exactly, and really there was no sign of him coming, and I had made the appointment for my 41 week checkup. Everything looked fine, and my geese have already left by this time of day. There's like a swamp pond thing in the woods over there, and in the mornings they fly that way, and normally in the afternoon they fly away. I don't know where they go, but apparently they're still over there. There's a lot of noise. I hope this is going to be okay. Anyways, so I had planned my 41 week appointment scheduled, and honestly I thought I would make it to it because I was having no signs of him coming, no contractions really, or not that I realized, just nothing. The only thing previous was like the month before, I had experienced some Braxton Hicks, just like where your stomach kind of tightens, but no, it's not painful, it's just really uncomfortable. But other than that, I didn't really have any other contractions, and so that Thursday I had woken up in the middle of the night a few times. Well, I say the middle of the night. I must have fallen asleep kind of early, but because of the timeline of events, but I woke up, I believe it was twice, if I remember correctly. It was 3 years ago, but I woke up twice, I believe, with pain, and it was kind of like similar to period pain I'd had, and I've always had like terrible periods. The majority of them. Occasionally I'd have one or two that wasn't so bad, but for the most part I always experienced a lot of pain, and I probably should have went to the doctor for that, but I never did. But anyways, I had that type of pain, and the best way I can describe it is, I don't know if, like, when you're a little kid, if you did Indian burn, or if that's just something for around here, like where someone takes your arm, like with both of their hands, and then they twist opposite, and that burn feeling, that's how it would feel like inside on my ovaries, or like in that area. And so there was that pain, there was no tightening, and I woke up and I was like, ugh. And so it kind of passed, and I went to sleep, and it never dawned on me that that was a contraction, because in my mind, I guess I thought a contraction would be that tightening feeling plus, like, but a painful version of it. So, my doctor had mentioned that it would feel more crampy, but I've never really considered that cramps, I guess. But, now I know that it is, and I guess cramps in my head, when I think cramps, I think of, like, your leg gets a cramp, or like a Charlie horse or something, or you're typing at the keyboard and your hands get a cramp or something, on the computer keyboard. Does that make me sound old? Probably. Anyways, so, but those cramps obviously feel different, and I never really knew what to call that pain. Now I know. So I went back to sleep both times, and then I woke up because I really need to use the little lady's room. And so I got out of bed, and the second I stood up out of bed and took like one step, there was like some water or a liquid substance that came out, and I was like, did my water break, or did I just pee myself? I was like, I still have to pee. My bladder still feels just as full. So I went to the restroom. What's wrong, Snickers? Anyways, I went to the restroom, used the bathroom, and then I woke Nick up, and I told him, I said, I think my water just broke. And he barely moved. Like, I'm pretty sure he didn't believe me, and it's probably because I was like, I think it did. And I was like, I'm just gonna go ahead and call my doctor. So I called, it was in the middle of the night, so you get the answering service, but he called back really quickly. And I told him, I said, I think my water broke, but it wasn't like this huge gush like on the movies. It was just a little, but like more than a tiny bit. I don't know. Like a medium amount, but I'm not 100% sure, because I also had to go to the bathroom. But after it happened, I still had to go to the bathroom. Like, my bladder was still full. So, but I don't think I'm having any contractions. What do I do? And he said they have a test at the hospital, especially with considering how far along I was and how it sounded. He thought my water probably did break, and to go ahead and go to the hospital and let them check with the little test that they can do. So then Nick finally got out of the bed. I think after I talked to the doctor, and he was like, yes, go to the hospital. Nick was a little more woken up at that point. I think he was like processing more of what I was saying, like, no, really, we need to go get all this checked out. And two, because I was so unsure and I wasn't really in any pain at that time, I think that's another reason he wasn't. Because all we had ever experienced was, like, obviously the movies, and then, like, sorry, that pregnancy acid reflux, it's like, yeah, I probably need to go take some Tums. Okay. My battery died, my card filled up all at the same time. Anyway, so I got that stuff changed, took some Tums for my acid reflux, and now we can get back to the story. Where did I leave off? After I talked to my doctor, Nick was thankfully more awake, and I think he was better processing what I was telling him. So anyways, we got up, grabbed our hospital bags, stuff like that, went to the hospital, got checked in. I called my mom on the way for labor and delivery. I didn't really want anyone other than obviously the medical staff and Nick, and then my mother. and that was all that was with me. But yeah, so me and Nick got there, and we got all checked in, and then they put you in triage. They make the decision whether or not to send you home or if you're actually in labor and admit you into the hospital. So anyways, they put me in triage, and they asked me to change into like the hospital gown, which I did, and so it's just easier for them to be able to do everything. And then she used a it's kind of like a Q-tip, like a really long Q-tip, is like to like swab, and then she had a solution and this cup thing, and she was twirling it in there after she swabbed it, and she was telling us this takes about 10 minutes for the solution to work. So into the 10 minutes, if it turns blue, it was definitely your water. If not, then it was not your water. And before she could finish saying that, she looked down and she said, well, never mind, it's already blue. So yes, it was definitely your water that broke. So she called the doctor, let him know. He said, okay, go ahead and admit her into the hospital. And at this time, they also were like had the monitors on my stomach so they could see the contractions on the screen, and my contractions were kind of all over the place. They were not consistent, and they were not intense at all at this point. And so he said, go ahead and start Pitocin, and then he also said that I could go ahead and get the epidural. It's like this most places, but they have the epidurals where it's like patient controlled, so if you need it, you can push the button, and if you don't need it, you don't have to. And then it locks for safety, like, so you can only, I mean, you can push it all you want, like physically push it down, but it will only actually administer the medicine every 15 minutes. So, yeah, they got me admitted into the hospital, and I had never had an IV before, so I didn't really know what to expect. I guess I always assumed it would feel like when they take blood, but it was, I mean, obviously it wasn't like excruciating pain. It just shocked me. So I was like, when she gave me the IV. I did test positive for the, what is it, the strep B that they check for like late in pregnancy, so I had to have antibiotics throughout labor for safety for the baby. So they wheeled me back to my actual room, and they got my medicines hooked up to my antibiotic and the Pitocin, everything hooked up to my IV. And then the anesthesiologist came in, and she gave me the epidural. I was so nervous for the epidural because I've heard so many horror stories, but thankfully I had also talked to a couple of people and that said the epidural wasn't too bad, and one of our friends that had given birth just a couple of months before, she said it felt more like a zing feeling, and that was like the perfect description because I couldn't think of a better word. And I almost didn't even feel like it was not painful at all. The IV hurt way worse than the epidural, so super grateful for that. And also, I know some hospitals, they make your spouse or whoever you have with you while you're giving birth, your birthing partner, like leave the room. And I know some, they allow them to stay in the room, but then they can't go over. But I was so grateful that our hospital allowed Nick to, allowed me to hold on to him while they administered it, because it just like eased my anxiety so much. Like it really calmed me down. But yeah, so they gave me that, and then after she left, my nurse and Nick both kind of like picked me up by each arm to like lift me up better into the bed and slid me up some. This is important later. So anyways, they slid me up in the bed. We're sitting there, and then all of a sudden I feel like wet on my back. And I told my nurse, I was like, feels like wet on my back. And she takes her hand and she feels my back like this. She didn't look, she just does it. She's like, I don't feel anything. Okay. So then I just think, I'm still trying to think, maybe it's my nerves, or maybe, like kind of tricking you, how, especially since it's in your spine. I don't know, like, how all that works. So I was like, okay, whatever. A little time passed, and another thing that shocked me about the epidural is I've heard people say like completely numb them, they could not move. I was numb, but I could still feel my legs in a weird way. I don't really know how to explain it because they were numb, but I could feel them and I could move them. So while I wouldn't have been able to walk, and I couldn't pick myself up in the bed, I could still lift my legs a little. Like if this is the bed, I could lift them like that much. So, but yeah, and I could move them around. But the feeling, I still kept feeling that wet feeling, and the feeling was slowly starting to come back. Like I could feel more and more of my legs, and I tried to tell my nurse that, and then I was also starting to feel contraction pain. And it was also like throughout this time that I looked over and they had, tell you how when the machine does this, that's a contraction, so you can look at it. It's also like when it registered that pain that I had woke up to, had been feeling, was actually contractions. So I was like, oh. So anyways, that pain I was starting to feel, and I was like, I'm starting to feel, one, my legs, the feeling's coming back. 2, it feels wet on my back. And 3, like it's starting to get painful. It was still tolerable, but I was just letting her know. And I think she felt my back again, but she never would look. She's like, it doesn't feel wet to me. So then she called the anesthesiologist in, and at this point, the anesthesiologist, I guess their shifts had changed, so it was a new guy. And he didn't look either, but he took a cloth that was wet, and I can't remember if it was hot or cold. I think he made it cold, and he just asked if I could feel the temperature. I told him no, I can feel that it's wet, but I cannot feel the temperature, which is like a really weird feeling. And then I tried to explain to him at that point too, okay, I understand that I don't feel the temperature, but what I'm trying to explain is I don't know how to describe it, but the feeling is coming back slowly, but it's coming back. He's like, okay. So then he just took, I'm not sure what it was, some kind of medicine, and then injected it into the thing, I guess it's like an IV, I don't know what you call it, into the thing that's in your back for the epidural. And he said that should work, and I was like, okay. When he first did it, I was like, ooh, that feels really cold. And he's like, yeah, it feels cold. But it still felt like it was on the outside of my back. And again, I just thought it was like your nerves. It's how it's like in your spine, and maybe it just felt like that. So he left. Fast forward, the contraction pain started getting more and more intense. Because you got to think, I went from feeling really nothing to like Pitocin contractions, and there was like not much workup time to it. And I don't know if that's normally how it is, but it was just like boom. And I was still trying to tell my nurse that something wasn't right, and then they try and turn you like, oh, maybe the medicine needs to, you need to rotate so it can move around. And so they turn me on my side. And like at this point I was in so much pain. My mom is like really frustrated, and my nurse, for some reason, I don't know, other than a miracle, she had to leave the room for some reason and go tend to someone else or something else. I don't know why she left, but she did for a few minutes. And then my mom went out to find a different nurse because my mom was really irritated at this point because they weren't listening to me. So, which she had every right to be. But like I said before, I don't know why, but I was so scared. I didn't want to make anyone mad. And, I remember I told my mom, don't be mad, get glad. The Gladware. I don't know why I said that. I don't know. I guess I just wanted to try and, like, not make the situation too intense. I don't know. But anyways, so my mom went and got a different nurse. And the nurse, the second she stepped into the room and could see me, like she wasn't even, I don't even think she was all the way in the room. All I heard her say was, she should not be in this much pain. Like she just took one look at me. And then she walked over to the bed where I was at, and she looked, finally someone with their eyeballs looked at my back. And then I heard the words, the epidural came out. Turns out I'm not crazy. It actually did come out. There was a reason I was feeling wet on my back, because it was just drizzling out. Not even in my back, but on the outside of my back. Like, okay. And so they called the anesthesiologist back. He came back and he gave me a second one, and I was in so much pain at this point, and it's like there was almost no break in the contractions. It was just like constant, and I had so much pressure. Obviously you have to like sit up, like sit normal, and then like curl like this when they do it. But I had so much pressure on my bottom. I felt like I was squishing my poor baby's head, and I was so like worried about it, and I was like, okay. So I was like, and I'm in so much pain. They're like, okay, we're like, there's no pause, so it's not like they could wait until in between contractions or something like that. So, and I was like borderline shaking. It was hurting so bad. So I was in a lot of pain, and I do that, like I'm squishing Nico's head, and so then he gives me the second epidural, and it was like instant relief. Like the second he put that sucker in my back or did whatever he does back there, I mean, it was quite literally instant. And I just remember being like, okay. So then he taped that sucker down really good. Like I kept thinking like he was done putting tape on my back to hold it in place, and then I would hear the tape roll like some more, and he was like putting so much tape. I'm pretty sure that it slipped out when Nick and my nurse slid me up in the bed, because other than that I hadn't moved around much. So I'm pretty sure, and it wasn't long after that I was feeling that wet feeling. So yeah, after he left, my nurse did apologize to me, like for not like looking and not believing me, and I mean, it's my assumption obviously, but I'm pretty sure she just thought I was being a big old baby myself and just not taking labor well. But I don't know, or if I was making up. I honestly don't know what she thought. So, because I mean, with the epidural you shouldn't feel pain in that way. I don't know. So anyways, time passed, and I guess I still, even though I had that pressure, I still wasn't dilated enough to push yet. And yeah, so my nurse left again. I can't remember. I think she, at this point, because everything was good, I think she didn't have to stay in there. Maybe that's what it was. I can't remember. But she left again, and then we were just in there, and I don't know. Like, it has to be something to do with your hormones, I'm sure. But all of a sudden, I felt so amazing. Like, I wish I could feel like that all the time. Like, I just felt like so happy and so lovey and just like high on life. I just felt so amazing. And I was like, wow. Like, I hope I feel like this forever. And it was just kind of all of a sudden. And, yeah, it was great. Didn't last that long, though, so that was a bummer. And then when it, like, that feeling wore off, it's not like I felt bad, but I just felt like normal again versus feeling, like, really amazing. So I was like, And then it was not long after that she checked me, and I was ready to go to push. So, and I had, like, a ton of pressure. I still wasn't feeling any pain, thankfully, anymore. And I just had a ton of pressure, like, on my bottom. That was about it. So she told my doctor, okay, she's whatever the stuff is, like 10 centimeters dilated, and whatever the other effaced. I don't know. I was fully ready to go. I can't think of the things right now. But anyways, she called my doctor and let him know that I was ready to start pushing, and it was still early enough in the day that he was there at this point, because this was on into the next day, because we had gotten at the hospital like at midnight, and this was in the I don't know what time it was, around lunch or early afternoon, whatever. He said, okay, well, he was just going in to do a C-section, so I can either wait for him just like try my best to wait to start pushing until he does the C-section, which will take X amount of time. I want to say he said like 40 minutes, but honestly I cannot remember. Or I can go ahead and they can call in the doctor, the on-call doctor for the weekend, because he was already there and I guess had started his shift. I was like, well, if I have the option to wait and I'm feeling okay other than the pressure, I prefer to wait, just because the other doctor's a really good doctor. It's just my doctor is amazing, and I just was comfortable with him, obviously, and he has a really great like bedside manner, which really puts me at ease, and I just really wanted him to deliver my baby if that was an option at all. So I chose to wait. I waited. He got there and he came in, and talked to me for a minute. He was just kind of going over things with me, and he was like, typically, like if someone pushes 30 minutes, that's considered like a really fast push time. Someone that pushes like 4 hours, that's a really long push time. But anyways, yeah, and he said, well, I'm just going to be like right outside the door, basically like at either the nurse's station, or my room just happened to be right next to the break room. So he said either be there or the other one, but he has monitors that he's watching, and I can go ahead and start pushing with my nurse until the baby gets to a certain like point. And I was like, okay. So started pushing, and I don't like, in my head I felt like I was pushing like thankfully like 20-30 minutes, and then I realized like an hour or two had passed. I was like, holy cow. And then and it was long enough my nurse had, at first she was like, I'll tell you when to push, because she could see the contractions on the thing, and then she'd gotten to the point where she wasn't really paying attention to it, and then I was like, could I have pushed, because I felt like I should have pushed, but I didn't. I mean, I was waiting, and so I didn't, and then she looked at the monitor, and she's like, oh yeah, you could have, but that contraction's gone out. She's like, well, you can just push whenever you feel like it. I was like, okay. So then I just like started pushing whenever I felt the urge to push, and so I don't know how long I was pushing when he came in. Total push time from the time I started pushing till the time he was born was 3.5 hours. So had the long push time. He did have a large head. This baby does too, apparently larger than average, according to the ultrasounds and stuff. But yeah, they're just very smart babies. That's all I gotta say. Big brain. But yeah. But also, it can be like maybe my pelvic floor wasn't strong, or maybe I wasn't pushing right. I mean, I don't know, like, why I pushed so long, but I've talked to other people who also had to push as long, so I feel like it makes me feel better. But, yeah, I'm not, so I'm assuming I was pushing, like, around 3 hours before he came in, because when he came in, I don't know, like, if I had the right perception of time, but things just moved really quickly, I felt like, once he got in there. So finally his head was down enough that it was like almost time for him to be born, and so the doctor, he ran in really quickly, and whenever he came in, he asked my nurse, he's like, have you played tug-of-war with her yet? And she's like, no. I was like, what? He's like, go ahead and start that, while he was putting on his like surgical stuff that they have in there that's already that's freshly opened and stuff, so that it's sanitized, whatever the word is, pregnancy brain, anyways, it's clean. So he's putting that stuff on, and like she handed me one end of a towel, and then she's like, okay, you pull and I'll pull like on your next time you need to push. I was like, okay, but then I almost pulled her on top of me. And I didn't even know until I gave birth that like pushing is really, it uses your entire body. And later on, obviously after birth, like my entire body was sore, not just like your stomach, and my entire body. So but yeah, so when she almost fell on me, then he was already all scrubbed up or whatever you want to call it. And he came over there and he took it from me. He's like, here. So then he did it, and he was doing it, and he, you know, was strong enough to hold it. And that really helped pushing. I was shocked. Really interesting trick. But yeah. And also, I know this is going to sound silly, but it made me feel better playing tug-of-war because I could see both of his hands. And, like, it's kind of intimidating because they have, like, the table laying next to him, and you can see all the scissors and knives and all that in case he needs to use them. And I'm just like, okay, if I keep playing tug-of-war, I can see where his hands are, and I don't have to worry about the scissors. I know it's stupid because if he's got to use it, he's got to use it, but at the time I was like, okay. So, that greatly helped push. And another thing that helped push was not fun. Before he came in, I had gotten sick, and I don't know if it was hormones or if it was something to do with one of the medicines or the epidural or what it was, but I got sick and I had to throw up like 2 different times, and like each time I had to throw up multiple times. It was like sessions of it. It was not fun. And then whenever he was in there, like right at the end, that happened again. Which, the good thing about it, even though 100% sucks, is it really helps push the baby down. Because it's using those same muscles. So, anyways, finally, he starts crowning. And guess what? I can feel. Even though I couldn't feel the contraction pain, and I'm super grateful for that, like, at that point, I could feel the entire crowning in, like, that whole area, apparently. So, I think, from my understanding, maybe my epidural still wasn't done just right, because I'm told that area should have been numb. But, you know what? It is what it is. And, yeah, anytime I just felt, like, really intense, like whether then or like earlier in the time, only things that like got me through, I would just have to tell myself over and over, it's like, oh, thanks you guys, it's me, and like just over and over until I could like calm down a bit. Anyways, so I started feeling that, and I was like, it's burning, can I push my button? And my doctor said, well, the button, it's not gonna really make a difference now. I was like, yeah, but can I push it? Is it safe to push it? He's like, it's safe to push it. Yes, you can push it, but if it makes you feel better. I was like, yes, it makes me mentally feel better, so please just let me push the button. So I was pushing the button. When they call it the burning ring of fire, they're not kidding. It's intense. So, yeah, thankfully, it doesn't last too long. And, well, it sucked that my epidural wasn't done correctly, and one way, like, I'm almost, like, grateful to have experienced that, just because now I know, like, how it is, like, because I was just scared of it in general before. I was 16 when my brother was born, and I was, like, down the hall, and I could still hear my mother screaming, because she, like, that labor went so fast with him that they didn't have time to really give her any meds or anything, and then they had to use the vacuum, and it was bad. So I was traumatized from just being down the hall and hearing everything going on. So, and then finally he was born, and like I look back at the video, and it's funny because like I said, everything felt like it was going fairly quickly in the time. From the time my water broke to the time he was born was 16 hours, but I had pushed 3.5 of those, but it felt fairly quick. And then like whenever like I first saw him and our eyes kind of met, and obviously I know that their eyes can't see well, but like my eyes locked on his, it felt like time just like froze for a minute. But when I look back at the video, like, it was like a split second, like, it was like so quick, I don't even know how I would have made that eye contact, but like I can still remember it. And then I just felt like this rush of like love, and I just like relief, and like so happy he was there, and just, I don't know, but like it almost makes me emotional to think about it. Like, the best feeling in the world, and then it's obviously like, then all the other stuff is like worth it at that point. You know, you get to see him, and he's there, and it didn't, like, the pain didn't, even though it sucked, it didn't matter anymore. And yeah, and I was just like like almost crying uncontrollably because I was like, oh, because I was just like so happy. And then so they laid him on my belly, and we did the delayed cord clamping. So, and then he just kind of just like long enough till it looks like, I guess, I don't know how they determine, like, okay, yeah, it's been delayed long enough. But and then they cut the cord. And listen, I'm so frustrated right now. My camera, I don't know what's wrong with it, because it stopped recording again, and I know it was recording. I don't even know how much of this I have. But yeah, that is Nico's birth story. I hope you enjoyed our little girl chat and hearing about my first birth, giving birth the first time, however you say it, I don't know. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe for future videos, and I guess I will see you in the next one. Bye.